Welcome everyone to Women and Gender Minorities in STEM, a monthly speaker series brought to you by the Ecotarium. My name is Paige Curtis. My pronouns are she, her. I'm so excited to introduce our April 2021 speaker, Christina Gomez.
Hi, Christina. Thanks so much for being
Hi.
here.
Thanks for having me.
If you could share with us your pronouns and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Currently, I work at UMass Medical School in Worcester, Massachusetts, in the Department of Medicine, Infectious Disease.
Well, thanks so much again for being here, Christina. We're so happy to have you. For our Women and Gender Minorities in STEM speaker series, we like to kick off our interviews with hearing a funny field or lab story or industry story or school story or whatever you have. So do you have one of those that you could share with us?
I It's actually a story not from the lab I work in now, but my mother and I actually started a business together. It's an Amazon-based company. It's called Bear Babe Balm. She's an attorney, so she handles the patent, marketing, trademark aspect of things and all of the web design. And I'm the chemist. So in any event, it was up to me to get the ingredients and recipe together. And I thought, okay, I have a background in chemistry. How difficult could this really be? So we set up shop. So I have my whole chemistry set up with everything all ready to go. I'm in my lab coat with my goggles. You know, I have to have the look too. So I started doing some research on all natural organic ingredients. It's a lot. There's a lot more that went into it than I thought, right? So I figured as long as I know the boiling point and different components of each ingredient, I can play around. It's kind of like baking, right? Well, I was sadly mistaken. We're there one day and I'm cooking up a storm trying to get our products the way we want them. I stepped away to use the bathroom, and the next thing you know, I hear my mom screaming, "Call the emergency! Oh my God, there's an emergency! Call 911!" So I'm like, "Oh my God!" So I come running from the bathroom, and there was a volcanic eruption. So one of the beakers I was using and one of the flasks boiled over on the hot plate. There was gelatinous material everywhere, stuck to the surfaces. I ruined all of our molds. And I'm thinking my mom burnt herself or fell, or so I come running out. And of course, I ended up slipping in the stuff. I fell on the floor. It was a catastrophe. So needless to say, we, as business grew, we did end up outsourcing. So now we have a professional that does that aspect. I was able to develop the recipes, but it wasn't a pretty sight at first, I'll tell you that much.
So was your mom wanting to call 911 because of the overflow?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She thought she had no idea what was in there. She wasn't sure if there was I literally thought she either got hurt or an atomic bomb went off. I was so confused. I stepped away to use the bathroom, and literally something can be simmering in a flask on a hot plate, and within a fraction of a second, it's boiling over like those volcano science projects you see when kids do science fairs. So you really have to pay attention, and I should have known that, but I figured, I can step away for a minute, and yeah, so.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, Christina. My next question is, can you tell us a little bit about what is it that you do?
Sure. So, as I said, I work in infectious disease as a researcher. More specifically, I work with Cryptococcus, which is a fungal pathogen. There's about 50 different species, and only 2 of them are considered human pathogens, and those are the 2 I work with. One targets immunocompromised individuals, so HIV/AIDS patients, solid organ transplant recipients, somebody with autoimmunity, and the other strain I work with targets immunocompetent people, so otherwise healthy individuals. Currently, we're working in vaccine development to protect at-risk persons from cryptococcal infections. We're working with glucan particle-based delivery systems, as well as whole cryptococcal organisms attenuated by deletion of chitin deacetylase genes.
So, for a person like me who doesn't know what any of that means, what does that mean?
So, essentially, we're covering immunology, and that's the basis of how any host is going to respond to a fungal pathogen. Your immune system is your protection, right? So you've got different lines of defense. You've got your skin, you've got your mucous membranes, and then you've got special immune cells. And there's different ones in different parts of the body. So that's where specializing comes in. You know, each lab works on a different small component of the immune system. So for us, cryptococcosis is a pulmonary infection that can disseminate to the brain and cause meningoencephalitis. So, which is essentially lethal. It causes swelling of the brain. It'll colonize in there. So basically, we're studying how the immune cells in the lungs respond to induction of cryptococcus. And by looking in depth at how cryptococcus colonizes the lungs as well as the brain, it gives us some insight on where we start with the development of a vaccine.
Interesting. So, what would you say? What is the importance of this antifungal vaccination? Is that right? Like in layman's
So,
terms.
currently there are no fungal vaccines approved by our FDA on the market. So, it would be a big deal to be able to develop an antifungal vaccine that's safe for humans and all different humans, right? We're each very different genetically, health wise. So, something can work for one demographic of people, but not for the rest. And that's not an ideal vaccine. So, it's a lot of trial and error. So essentially, bringing an antifungal vaccine to market would be huge. The CDC provides statistics. So, for example, there's over 180,000 deaths due to cryptococcosis in HIV/AIDS related patients each year. Places like Sub-Saharan Africa have tons of cryptococcus cases. So, for areas of the world that require lower cost diagnostic tools and don't have the medical technologies that we have, this could be the difference between life and death for some people, for a lot of people.
So, what drew you to this world? What drew you to immunology?
Oh, well, I didn't just, I know some people say, I know what I want to be when I grow up. Well, I thought I wanted to be a pediatric surgeon. That changed throughout grade school. I always enjoyed being a student. I always did pretty well grades wise, but it wasn't until I got to high school that I really found what I loved to do, right? So I ended up attending a charter high school that focused on aquaculture or aquatech. I went the aquaculture route. So that's where I really fell in love with science, between having incredible teachers and being able to have a hands-on experience in a state-of-the-art wet lab working with all different species of aquatic fish. It was really incredible. So I really got a taste of what hands-on research was like, right? And so, of course, I was geared towards marine biology. Then I realized, okay, for me personally, I don't like to travel that much. I prefer going to the same job every day. So probably not going to go with marine biology. It's definitely a passion, so I've become more of a hobbyist, if you will. But I really did love being in a lab setting, right? So I said, okay. Then for college, I ended up attending Becker College, where I decided to go the veterinary science route at first. And there's a lot of different, technician jobs or jobs in labs where you're, doing diagnostic testing for people's pets, et cetera. So that was pretty much my goal, potentially vet school. And when I got to my senior year, I stumbled into my professor, Dr. Whitehead's class, and everything changed. She really gave me and the other students um, a look at what actual research in academia and in the private sector is like. And I had never really experienced that. Yes, I had done labs for college. I worked in the wet lab in high school, but I never really got to experience what working in a true chemistry or research lab was like. And I fell in love. I fell in love with it. So I've always loved science, right? Um, but over the years, my direction definitely changed. And I guess you could say I kind of stumbled upon research. Now, that was just generally. I was job searching because waitressing wasn't cutting it. So I was job searching for something I could do while finishing school. And this was in my junior year of college. And I found a job posting for UMass. So I said, okay, UMass must probably a good place to work. I went in for the interview. I had no idea what I was interviewing for, right? I didn't know I should have read what kind of research the lab does. Sometimes those aren't things that are told. You can be prepped for an interview, but this was different. And so I was a little nervous going in, but I hit it off with my boss. Everyone here was so friendly. I got lost 8 times on campus. People helped me out. I wasn't afraid to say, no, I don't know what that is, but I'm willing to learn. I wasn't made to feel uncomfortable. And although I was very probably underqualified, nobody made me feel that way. So my nerves kind of stopped once I started talking with everyone. And I got a tour of the lab, and they gave me a brief synopsis of what they did here and what I would be doing if I got the job. And I said, this is it. I love this. And they were so accommodating with my school schedule. So I hadn't graduated from my undergrad yet. So I was allowed to finish going to school full time, and I was able to work here full time. So it was incredible. You don't find many jobs in a field you're looking to go into where you're able to do both, or where you can get hired before you have a degree. It's a big misconception that you have to have a PhD or you have to have a bachelor's to work in research or in a lab setting, or for a university. That's not the case. It doesn't matter. There's people who haven't gone to college that have just worked their way up and have been here for years and done all different positions. And most universities like to promote within. So there's a lot of opportunities here, right? So yeah.
And it's so interesting that you say that, because that's certainly a conception that I held for a lot of years, is if you want to work at a university, or if you want to be in research, or if you want to, you have to do, 6 to 10 years of school first. And
right. And yeah, so that's what I thought too. I thought going in for my job interview, I said, this will be a good experience. I can maybe network a little bit, but probably not going to happen. And it did. So, I almost wish I had known sooner, or had the confidence and the knowledge to try this sooner.
So I have to backtrack just a little bit. You've mentioned in previous conversations that for one of your projects at the charter high school that you went to, you bred seahorses and clownfish.
Hold on, my lights went out. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Oh my God. So yeah, in high school, as my senior project, I got to breed clownfish and seahorses. So I'll give you some tips on how to breed clownfish and seahorses for a novice hobbyist, right? So basically, clownfish are actually really interesting. They're sequentially hermaphroditic. So at different times in their life, they will transition between male and female, especially they mate for life. So especially if their mate is lost, they will transition from male to female to be able to provide offspring and carry on. So once you pair up a male and female, they need to become bonded, meaning they swim together, sleep next to each other. There's no aggression, and that's essentially mating for life. The next thing you want to do is you want to have a bare bottom tank. So you don't want to have a flashy, fun tank, right? It's just not ideal for breeding. When you have hundreds of tiny fish eggs, you want to be able to keep track of them. So once the female is ready, she'll lay her eggs on the substrate and the male will swim over them and fertilize them. And what's really cool is the male does all the caring for the eggs. So he aerates them by fanning them with his tail. He gets rid of ones that haven't been fertilized. He protects them, and the female just gets to kick back and relax. Now, with seahorses, they're similar in the sense that they mate for life, but there's probably two giant differences. The first one is that male seahorses are the only species in the animal kingdom where the male gives live birth. The female will lay up to 1,500 eggs in his pouch, and he'll go through a 45-day gestation period. And after the 45 days, he goes into rigorous contractions, and he gives birth to live seahorses. They're the size of like the tip of a pencil. So, and there's hundreds to thousands of them in the tank. It's quite incredible to catch a live birth going on. So that's really neat. I thought that was pretty cool.
That's amazing. And you did this was a project that you did in your senior year of high school?
Yeah, my senior year of high school. So the curriculum was set up where your junior year, you did half a year of aquaculture and half a year of aquatech. So you can figure out what it is you actually want to do. So each day you'd have a half day of regular classes, your math, your English, your history. And then for the other half of the day, you would go to your tech or aquaculture classes. And so it was a great way to break up school. It gave you something to look forward to. You're working hands-on in a fish lab. We had great professors, and we also had really cool trips. We ended up going to Bermuda for our senior year trip. So that was pretty neat too.
I have so many questions. One of them though is, so how do you think having so much exposure to actual research as a high school student, how do you think that impacted your relationship with STEM and your path to where you are now?
I'll be honest. I've never been the greatest test taker. I get very fidgety sitting still, and I probably work best off the reward system, right? So I want to know that if I'm putting a lot of time and effort into something, there's going to be something great at the end, right? And I think that's probably most people. So having the opportunity to physically, execute ideas and bring ideas and thoughts to fruition, rather than just writing it down on a piece of paper or memorizing it for a test, really fosters a different relationship, right? I think it fosters a much better relationship with science, technology, engineering, and math. For me, anyways. I've always been a visual, hands-on learner. Auditory or just reading a book isn't always enough for me. So I think having that aspect as for younger people in high school, starting younger, there's not enough of that, right? Rather than just having the ordinary science textbook, being able to actually take something and apply it, the application of it, really makes a huge difference. And it can change somebody's thought process. So if you struggle with, like me, like test taking, that could make you hate a subject, right? That could make you totally not interested. But being able to hands-on, be able to conduct science in whatever aspect, whatever facet, that's the big difference, right? That's where most people excel and do their best work. And I feel like a lot of people are cut off from ever having the opportunity to fall in love with something like science, technology, engineering, or math, because they never get to truly apply what they've learned.
To go back to kind of more present day things that are in your life, I'm curious, what would you say is the biggest misconception about vaccines, or the most difficult thing to communicate to the public?
So I think those two kind of go hand in hand, right? So some of the biggest misconceptions are definitely that, for example, um, natural immunity is better than vaccine acquired immunity. So basically, exposing yourself and getting sick the regular way, the all natural way, is better than vaccine acquired. Now, with that, sure, if you contract an illness naturally, your body may develop a stronger sense of immunity, but is the risk really worth it? No, it's not. Vaccines use attenuated, less virulent forms of whatever it's vaccinating against. So you may have mild symptoms, but you're not going to potentially put yourself at risk of dying. Like with COVID, do I want to catch COVID the all natural way? No, I don't. I'd rather be vaccinated. Some other misconceptions are that vaccines are linked to autism, or, for example, the DTP vaccine, so that's your tetanus pertussis. There's been a lot of speculation that DTP vaccines are linked to SIDS, which is sudden infant death syndrome, in children. So most children who die of SIDS are at the age range where they're receiving their 3 DTP shots. So that's truly the only link. And recent studies have shown that children vaccinated with their DTP shots are actually less likely to die of SIDS. So I think a lot of, myth and misconception come from speculation, unfortunately, people making inferences without having the full lowdown on, what's really going on. Without the research and without the data, people make assumptions, and that's where those things come from. Also, I mean, regarding toxin, I'm sure you've heard before, vaccines are unsafe because there's toxins in them. Sure, some vaccines will have formaldehyde, mercury, aluminum, and yes, those are toxic, but not in trace amounts. And any vaccine that's FDA approved and brought to market is going to only have trace amounts that won't affect you. Our FDA in the United States is extremely strict. It typically takes between 5 and 7 years for a clinically approved vaccine to come to market. They dot all their I's and cross all their T's. So anything that's being offered to adults or children is going to be safe for the most part. I think with communicating to the public, receiving a vaccine is the most selfless thing you can do. It's not just about yourself. And of course, we all want to be safe, right? That's human nature, is to think of yourself first. But sometimes you have to take a step back and say, if I receive this vaccine, how many lives can I save? It's a sense that we all have to work together. We all have to look out for each other. And I think that's a big issue with, being able to communicate that to the general public, is that it's a really selfless act to take.
And a phrase came to mind when you were talking about these inferences that are being made without the research behind it. It's that, what is it? Correlation does not equal causation, right? Is that the term?
Yeah, that's a staple. I mean, you know what? That's so funny. In my senior year at Becker, I can't count the number of times that, my professor, Dr. Whitehead, said that to us or wrote it on the board, especially in statistics. It's so true.
So, Christina, another question I have is, I'm wondering if you could walk us through what a day in the life of someone in your career path, what does that look like?
Working in research, there's a lot of planning. Okay. Some experiments can be a 1-day thing. Others can be a 6-month to a year process. So Plan is the biggest thing. So I am working off of a schedule. It's not a strict schedule. A lot of things can be changed. There's, ranges of days or hours when you can choose to do certain things, different time frames or time points. But a schedule is huge. So aside from having, a rough idea of, okay, today I'll be, vaccinating this, or, aside from that, I get to pretty much choose my own hours, which is wonderful. So I come in around 9 o'clock to the lab and I will prep my vaccines. So I may be making them or I may be defrosting them from a -80 freezer, getting them to the appropriate concentration for the dose I want to deliver. A lot of times you're working with different animal models. If you're doing an in vivo study, there's also a lot of bench work and wet lab work that we do. So culturing cells, doing microscopy and the microscope, tissue culture, etc. So some days I'm actually in the lab all day at the bench with my pipette mins, or on the microscope for hours. You can get lost on the microscope and lose time. It's probably my favorite pastime in there. I have to dedicate like my days off to that, or I won't get anything else done. But I move around a lot, so I'm moving around between different buildings depending on what facility I need to be in. We're a BSL2, being that we're infectious disease. So I actually, before I enter the facilities or the restricted areas where we conduct some of our research, I've got to get suited up in my little Tyvek jumpsuit with my hairnet and my booties and my gloves and my face covering, just to make sure, I have all the proper PPE protective equipment ready to go. So first and foremost, please stay safe. And yeah, so I'm moving around a lot. I'm either in the lab doing lab work, or I'm working with live animal models. So yeah, I'm definitely not sedentary. Most of my computer work or typing I have to do on the weekends because I can't sit still at the desk. So
That's awesome. That's so interesting to hear too, because I know in my mind sometimes you do think like, oh, research means like you said, kind of sitting and just like typing on the computer for hours. And it's cool to hear like you're still moving, going all over the place.
And I know that a lot of people think, okay, research, repetition, there's a lot of repetition. Yes, there is. You're going to be repeating the same assays and the same experiments sometimes, but science and technology is ever changing. In this field, I learn something new every day. I make mistakes too and learn from those. Working in academia it's incredible because the science is as forgiving as it comes. So there really is no such thing as a mistake. Any outcome you get, we learn something from it, and that's one more piece of information that gets us one step closer to our end goal. So it kind of takes off some of the pressure knowing that. And there's no expectations. You can have an idea that something may come out a certain way based on other data or other research. But when you're doing something, an experiment that's never been done before, it's subject for, any kind of outcome. So it can be what you expected or not. But again, it's always a new piece of information to the puzzle. So that I love, because I never feel like, oh, I made a mistake. It always gives me something to work from. And the collaboration aspect of it is incredible as well. I think some of the best ideas and some of my best experiments and best work have come from having a group conversation, just in the lab, just bouncing ideas off each other. Everybody sees things a little differently, and everybody brings something different to the table. And yeah, so the atmosphere in an academic setting is it's really a place where you're allowed to create and where your voice is heard, and where your thoughts and ideas are valued.
So I've got to ask, what's your favorite thing? Like, what would you say is the biggest perk or your favorite thing about your career?
Or my favorite thing about my career, honestly, is being able to work alongside some of the greatest minds I've ever met. UMass research settings, their entire campus, and this is the only place I've worked in research so far. So I'm speaking a bit biased regarding just UMass itself, but we have such a diverse and inclusive campus. And to me, that is huge. That is so important. Um, I get to work with all different kinds of people from all walks of life that teach me things, not only about the research we're doing, but about life in general. I've made lifelong friends here. This is my home away from home. So to me, that's the biggest perk. With an ever changing climate in the world we're living in, I think science, technology, engineering, and math, they're all becoming more diverse and more inclusive as the years go on. It takes people who want that to be the case to push for that. And luckily here at UMass, we have a great group of people that want an inclusive and diverse environment. So, I've learned a lot from that, and I want to be one of the pioneers pushing for that. I want STEM to be more attractive to people, and a place where you don't have to be afraid to go for an interview or try something new. I don't want it to be so scary. I want it to be a place where anybody can get involved, because that's how we solve global crises and pandemics, and it takes people from everywhere to come together. So our community has a little bit of that, and I hope that kind of spreads. So
It is. It's so important. It's because how can you have a holistic view of the world even if something's represented by
right.
one group of people, right? Like, so then I also have to ask, what's your least favorite thing, or if you don't have a least favorite thing, what's the most surprising
Okay, so
thing?
probably my least favorite thing would be the adjustment period it took for getting used to a little bit of failure sometimes. Um, to me, failure or something not going right has always had a negative connotation, right? It's scary. You sometimes I won't try something because I'm afraid to fail. Um, and working in research, you kind of have to set that aside, and you have to realize that just because something doesn't go the way you thought it was going to go doesn't mean it's bad. There's no right and there's no wrong in this field. So it took me a bit to adjust to that. And a lot of times when I had a hypothesis or an expected outcome and it didn't go that way, I would get pretty upset and worried and, really beat myself up about it. And I mean, our society teaches you that failure is the ultimate no. You don't want to fail. Like, you have to succeed. And so you kind of have to break away from that mold. So my least favorite part was the adjustment period. I struggled with that one. That was tough for me. It took me probably a good year to realize that all science is good science. Regarding the most unexpected aspect of the job, I'd have to say it's feeling like I have a purpose, right? Being a part of something that ultimately is going to make a difference, even if it's a small difference, and even if my contribution was just a small piece of the puzzle. Um, I made a change, and that's my legacy. And to me, isn't that part of what life is about? Um, I don't need anyone to know my name. I don't have to be an important person, but I do want my time here to matter. And working in research really gives me that sense of purpose, and I couldn't be more grateful for that.
What a great sentiment to have, and what a great feeling to have with the work that you're doing. So, Christina, we are right towards the end of our interview. And before we go, I'm wondering, do you have any parting words for us? Last little tidbits of information, words of wisdom?
Sure, I do. My path, my career path, my education path wasn't what you'd call traditional. Um, I'm a little bit older than most people, first, for finishing college or entering, their career. Um, but I just want people to know that we need to break the stigma attached to STEM. It's not a scary place, and these aren't scary fields to go into. Um, if you're interested in something, it doesn't matter how old you are, where you're from, none of that matters. Go for it. Don't let anything stop you. Even if you have to take a break in between, or life happens and you have to put things on pause, like, don't let go of your dreams, even if it's not for STEM. And especially us minorities and women here in STEM, we're an important part of this community, and we need to advocate for each other, and we need to welcome newcomers. So to me, that's really important.
Thank you so much again, Christina, for being our speaker for the month of April.
We hope to see you all at our live Q&A with Christina on Thursday, April 29th at 4 p.m. Eastern. Registration can be found at ecotarium.org.